It's going to be recorded, so just letting you know that it's going to be on the James Doyle report. That's it. So if you're with someone you shouldn't be, don't walk in front of the camera. Just saying. You know, you lucked out, obviously. So, just want and I want to thank everyone for being here. We just want to report, and we're thankful that we have members of government, wherever they may be, that show up to speak to us. So, just letting you guys know this. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, folks. Thank you all for coming out. My name is Parthy Andeva. It's been just over 2 years serving as City Councillor for Scarborough Southwest. Just as an aside, as you all know, a lot of eyes on our ward are riding right now. We've got two by-elections coming up, if anyone was wondering what I was getting at. This tonight is part of a longer set of meetings we've been organizing with the Cliff Crest RA. I know their full name is the Cliff Crest South Scarborough Village Residents Association. If you guys can put your hands up so folks know we're not connected. I do recommend joining them. They've been a very awesome and terrific leadership group for our community to work with me, work with staff to address issues from multi-tenant housing or rooming houses all the way to development applications. And more the merrier. It's always better to be organized when a community is looking for change and reform in municipal government. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I'm sure folks can connect. We've been ground zero for rooming houses since COVID. I don't have to tell you guys, we see it in our neighborhoods, we see it in our streets. This is a result of macro factors out of our municipal control, some extent provincial, but a lot of it municipal in how the city moved from, unlicensed or illegal from rooming houses to licensing it, and then a regime to bring them to code. We set up soon, I started term January 24 as councillor, and we organized a working group that had members of the Cliff Crest RA, as well as representatives from staff, and you'll meet them today, from planning policy to building code to fire to police to MLS, municipal licensing and standards, and a couple of more, so pardon me if I missed some of the staff groups out, that took a systematic approach to houses that we suspected were illegal rooming houses, and certainly ones that were giving clear problems to the neighborhood, whether it was waste, whether it was number of people in the building, in the basement or in the house, cars, parking, noise, etc. And with some successes, but also some challenges. And part of that, and I'm sure it'll come up, is what is the length and breadth of enforcement, particularly from the provincial court side, which in my opinion and experience requires reform at the provincial level. So it's a mixed bag, but and sometimes complicated, but today's session is to address the challenges that we're seeing, that we're facing, and also the challenges we've had as a working group in terms of addressing all of the cases that have been coming. As you guys know, that was something very important to me when I ran for council and highlighted it tremendously. We've seen this. And the reason, and just before we set up the night, the reason I started off with our ward being ground zero, literally, as staff will point out, we have the most number of illegal or unlicensed rooming houses in the entire city. So this is why I think there's potential. When we started the working group, the senior civil staff had pointed out what comes out of this can inform how the city responds, because we don't see this issue going away. It's about vigilance, it's about resilience, and it's about good public service. Okay, so with that,
do you have an idea how many rooming houses are in this ward?
We'll get to that in the Q&A, but it's in the dozens, I believe. So
Dozen?
I don't know what, Chris, if you have the number off the top of your head.
I have it in my slides. So.
Yeah, it's in the slides, sir. So folks, we're gonna try something. There's 18 slides. We're gonna do Q&As per slide to keep it thematic. But we of course want to finish the presentation and get to some general Q&A. So we'll try the strategy of addressing questions that are relevant to the slide. We'll keep it to that, and we'll progress with the presentation, of course, making time for a general Q&A at the end. And of course, you may have a question that didn't come up when that slide was on. Okay, so we'll try to do that so that way there's some consistency and a thematic approach. Okay, great. I'll call up Chris Ellis, who's the manager within the multi-tenant housing framework. And I'll leave it to you, Chris, to introduce the rest of your team.
Good evening, everyone. Roman Dillon at Roman Dillon is here with me. She's the manager of the licensing side. I'll have her introduce herself, and she's going to be starting off the presentation.
Awesome, thanks, Chris. So we want to thank the counselor and for everyone attending tonight. The way we're going to do the presentation today is I'm not sure how many people are operators or how many people are interested in learning more about unlicensed multi-tenant houses. So we are going to start talking about our licensing process, just so everybody can kind of understand what it takes to be licensed, right? And then Chris is going to go into the unlicensed homes and what our process is when somebody complains, what we're looking for, and kind of what we look for during our investigation, okay? And then we'll leave questions for the end. Awesome. Okay, so I think everybody knows the bylaw came into effect March 31st, 2024. So it establishes minimum safety, health, and property maintenance standards, right? If you are operating a multi-tenant house in the city of Toronto, you have to obtain a license, and they are permitted and regulated form of housing in Toronto where they meet zoning and licensing requirements. So they're permitted in all residential zones. The purpose of this bylaw is to ensure safe housing conditions, create accountability for operators, provide clear support pathways for tenants. So what do they do if they're living in a multi-tenant house? How do they complain about conditions of their multi-tenant house? How do they know what the parking rules are, etc., right? It also provides a complaint process for residents who are living in areas where there are unlicensed multi-tenant houses or licensed multi-tenant houses that aren't following any of the applicable bylaws. And then it also helps us regulate multi-tenant houses consistently across the city, because before, multi-tenant houses were not allowed in certain wards, including Ward 20, right? So why regulate this type of housing? This type of housing provides affordable housing options, right? It houses students, newcomers, seniors, and sometimes some of the most vulnerable people in the city are living in multi-tenant houses. The regulation ensures minimum safety and maintenance standards, and the licensing replaces some of the unregulated homes that existed before, but then also some of the legacy bylaws that didn't give MLS and other divisions maybe enforcement options. So just to quickly go over what a multi-tenant house is. So it's a premise that has 4 or more dwelling rooms rented individually. And this is the bylaw, this is the definition that's in the bylaw. And so it's occupied by people who do not live together as a single housekeeping unit. So they're not living as a traditional family. They typically don't know each other. And they usually can't go throughout the house freely. They're just contained to their room and then the common areas that they share with the other residents. And then there are shared facilities like a kitchen and or a bathroom. A dwelling room or a multi-tenant house room, that is a rental room that's used for living and sleeping. It may have its own bathroom or kitchen, but it doesn't have both. Because typically you'll share some of those other amenities with people that are also living in the home. And then an operator is the person who owns or is responsible for the operation of the multi-tenant house. So they're the person that would apply for the license. So what is not a multi-tenant house? So a residential premise that is licensed or approved by the government of Ontario or the federal government. So this could be like a long-term care home or a group home. Shelters that are operated on behalf or operated by the City of Toronto or another city agency. Student housing operated by a college or a university. So not student housing where like a private landlord owns it and they rent it out to people that are not operating as a family, but more so the university is the one that operates and owns that home. A student fraternity or a sorority house. Co-op student residences owned or leased by a nonprofit that provide housing accommodation on a cooperative basis, and then hotels or motels. And that also includes hostels as well. So I want to take a minute here to go over what our enforcement process is, or kind of what we've done year by year and what we're planning to do. So we have a 3-phased implementation process, right? So the first phase was education, right? It's a new bylaw. We wanted people to come into it. So that meant providing education, doing operator sessions, doing sessions for tenants so they knew what the multi-tenant house bylaw was. Right now we're in the second phase, which is licensing. So right now my team is focusing on those previously licensed operators and trying to bring them in compliance. So the ones that had licenses through legacy bylaws, those are the people that we're targeting right now to come into compliance. But that doesn't mean if you're unlicensed, we're gonna push you away. If you are willing and coming forward to become licensed, or if Chris's team identifies you as unlicensed, we will still move forward with trying to get you into the framework. And then the third phase, which is what we're entering into this new year, is gonna be ensuring adherence with the bylaw after grace period. So that means enforcement action, right? If you're unlicensed, issuing an order, issuing charges. And so that's what Chris will speak about later in the presentation. So there's two, oh yes.
Hi, does the Airbnb fall under the multi-tenant?
No, it does not. So that's under the short-term rental bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So there's 2 types of multi-tenant houses, licenses that you can apply for. You can be a regular multi-tenant house, which is a type A, and then there's a type B. So a type B is when the operator is providing personal care services to people living in the home. So it could be furnished living space, so beds, dressers, things like that. They provide an area for safe for your medication to be stored safely, as well as maybe meals, right, that are approved by a dietitian. So maybe these people can't cook on their own, so meals are either brought in or they're cooked within the facility. Typically, this level of care is not regulated by a regulated health professional, so it's not the type of care where you would need a nurse 24/7 or you'd need a doctor to be there 24/7, right?
Peter?
Yes.
So the question I have then is, what's the difference between that last multi-tenant house that you seem to be looking after vulnerable,
Yeah.
potentially seniors,
Yeah.
and a retirement home and a long-term care home? Because the latter two require licensing,
Yep.
and you're suggesting that yours doesn't require a license other than the municipal license. The former two require a provincial license. Yours, as I understand it, just requires a municipal license, and I don't
Yes.
see the distinction.
So the level of care is different, right? So that's what I'm trying to say is like a regulated health professional normally doesn't need to provide the level of care for someone who lives in a personal care home. So they're only provided like safe storage. Maybe they need laundry services. They may need like a recreational or social activities that are offered. But for something like you described, where let's say a regulated health professional is required, or the ministry or the government is licensing them, those would fall under long-term care or group homes. So
I'm going to let you go on, but it
Okay.
sounds too nuanced, and I'll be speaking with you
Okay.
later. Thank you.
perfect.
Paul?
Yeah, I just want to let you know that I fully support this initiative. It's a great initiative. It's great that we're looking out for the safety of tenants, fire building, code compliance. My problem is, in Scarborough Southwest, and I don't speak for that, that's where I live, is the definition where it says 4 rooms or more. The majority of homes, or many of the homes in Scarborough Southwest, are either 2-story, 1.5-story homes, or 3-bedroom bungalows, post-war. The majority of homes in the last 6 to 8 years have been bought by select groups of investors. Don't know where they're getting their money from, but they got a lot of them. They either fill these properties with multiple tenants, and if they don't do that, they tear them down what was once an affordable bungalow, build their big dream home for Ma or son, daughter. And then now with the economy and the housing market the way it is, there's not a demand for these big homes. And what I'm finding happening is that these brand new homes that are often have one and two secondary suites in the basement are popping up on Airbnb platform. And full disclosure, my wife and I are hosts on the Airbnb platform. We live in our house. And I find it disturbing that they're finding creative ways, this group of investors, because we're all connected in one way or another. They found a way to game the system. I've worked closely with short-term rentals with Chantel. She's wonderful. They've done a great job of enforcement to apply the bylaws and regulations. They've revoked a lot of licenses. But it's a trend that's happening. Our housing market is very precarious now, and they're finding ways to skirt our system. And like I said, I even told Councilor Perks that I support his initiative, that he brought this in. He's been working on this for 20 years. But that doesn't capture the reality of what's taking place in our community with investors. They don't care. And there's a big difference between an owner-occupied property and an owner-absent. I'll leave it at that.
No, that's a good point. And I will say that our team works closely with the short-term rental team. So if we're aware that somebody is short-term renting in a multi-tenant house and they are the owner, so if you're an owner or operator of a multi-tenant house, you can't operate it as a short-term rental.
Yeah, that wasn't my concern. I'm talking about the investors. It's a investment practice taking place that's very dominant in Scarborough Southwest. MLS, a lot of their inspectors are very familiar with the issues we've been dealing with. I don't know that we're going to see multi-tenant houses that are trying to do Airbnb, some burn, back up, put to a stop quickly. But it's a group of investors. There's about, 4 or 5 select groups. They have a lot of wealth coming in, and they've gobbled up the majority of homes that come to market in our area over the last 6-8 years. They outbid first-time buyers. There's signs of money laundering when they go for $500,000 over asking. It's putting first-time home buyers in a spot that they can't compete with this kind of wealth, and it's very problematic. So, like I said, I don't think anybody argues an MTH bylaw. It's needed, and it serves a great purpose. But we need to capture what's happening outside of that scope. And that's a 2 to 3 bedroom bungalow.
So I can't speak to the investors, but I can say if something's not a multi-tenant house and it meets the 3 or less than 4 rooms, let's say, right? If you have issues in terms of property standards or anything like that, you can still complain.
Yeah,
you can still,
and we have many of those in our neighborhood. Buildings gone out, fires gone out, they've done inspections. Building has issued, I don't know how many orders to comply for change of use. Okay, so I appreciate that. If you go on the inspection portal, those orders to comply have been up there for years now, and nothing changes.
I don't know if Toronto Building wants to step in to answer that question because I can't, but
Yeah, I can address that. To the extent that orders to comply are issued, yes. So up until July 2025, I was senior inspector on the Scarborough inspections team.
Oh, sorry, and you are?
Paul DiBattista from Toronto Building.
Thank you.
It's hard to see from there. But the long and short of it is, when I got to Scarborough in November of 2024 with our manager and our supervisor at that time, there was, I think, a general push that came from several community groups, Cliffside being one of them, but a couple of others, Ward 24, Ward 21, et cetera, where we recognized that the pervasiveness of basement apartments, illegal basement apartments and rental units warranted a little more attention and a little more activity than had previously been afforded. So I would say that the team, as it is now, I can't speak for them today because I'm no longer on the team. I'm in a different division at North York, but ultimately they are actively seeking out these orders to comply. They're actively enforcing them. And my group specializes particularly in enforcement. So we do enforcement of the building code for MTHs, the renovation licensing program. That's also our baby. In addition to that, we are working with kind of some of the worst offenders, you might say, throughout the city. So we're citywide. And the teams in Scarborough frequently reach out to us and ask for our assistance to generate these orders and eventually help them bring them to prosecution. For example, we were successful last year in bringing a subdivision with 44 discrete units in a mix of detached homes, row houses, and semis into legality by forcing them through with stop work orders and successfully bringing them to prosecution. So, you know, we are working on this. Unfortunately, that process is very, very laborious, very time intensive, and it's a case-by-case basis. Unfortunately, it's not something that we can just, you know, throw a cart, you know, just a blanket protocol at.
So would you acknowledge it is problematic?
It's problematic, absolutely, but it also is something that has to be done on a very direct, very individualized basis.
And I guess my last point to all this is, unlike short-term rentals, where my wife and I are compelled by our agreement with Airbnb to comply, and if we don't, the city can have our license revoked and removed from the platform. So there's a mechanism in place, whereas within MTH housing, there is no platform that these investors or landlords belong to, where, Chris, you can say, okay, you're breaking the rules, and we're going to revoke your license, and you're out of business. It's two different things, and so I guess, you know, and I don't want to badmouth investors, because a lot of good homeowners out there own multiple properties, they're very responsible. But we have been inundated in Scarborough Southwest, like I said, with a few select groups. They're problematic, MLS can tell you that, and I'm sure building inspection.
I think I've got a couple in my mind right now, so yeah.
And you know, and the other issue I have is a little bit unrelated, but when these people apply for their building permits for their stream homes, they apply for a secondary suite in the basement, but they're in fact building 2 in the basement. So I do know a little bit about fire code to do with egress, and if you don't have a second point of egress, either through an egress window or a stairwell, that violates code. And that's, you guys are more familiar with that than I am. But it's problematic, because I think we have a lot of death traps in these new homes, because they have tiny windows high up, and they're bedrooms, and they're, you know, anyways.
I can address that in sort of in a generalized sense, in the sense that I can tell you that there are 2 ways that one can, you know, forge ahead with respect to the path of creating a basement secondary suite. The new house path means any building that's less than 5 years old, but that path is rigorous. The fire separation requirements, the egress requirements, they're extensive. And frankly, you know, I think, do a very good job of managing our ongoing building permits and new construction to the best of our inspectors' abilities. And when we do encounter construction that falls outside of that regime, we address it with orders and pursue them. The other side of the coin is taking a house that is older than 5 years, that falls under, you know, sort of more lenient jurisdiction, let's say, under the building code. That is a little different, and we do try to work with homeowners who, you know, just kind of need to make ends meet, to stretch the budget by maybe hosting someone or 2 people in their basement. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, when there's a permit in place, that's our bailiwick, and we do our darndest to make sure that they're coming through for us and for the community at large. We take that part very seriously. And in cases where we do find a work no permit on that basis, yeah, we're taking decisive action.
We've got a couple of questions, and I think we'll get back.
Still for me?
Over there, yeah.
Yes, Mark Baker, actually I live here in Scarborough Southwest. I have had an unlicensed rooming house beside me. I can tell you it is not a whole lot of fun. It has now basically been unoccupied. Someone is there trying to repair it after they pretty much demolished the house, the so-called tenants. What I want to know is what are my options if they want to try and turn it into a licensed rooming house? Do I have the ability to put in a grievance on that and attempt to stop it? Because if I get a rooming house beside me, that affects my property value, and their investments do not concern me. My property value does. So what are my options on that? And two, is it useful in any way to get an outside lawyer involved to put in some sort of a stop? Okay.
Well, part of that is
You want to start on the building?
I can start on the code side. I mean, on the code side, ultimately, it starts with the zoning application, a ZAP. So that is what generally they have to come forward with to obtain before they can even approach MLS on the licensing side of things. But that still doesn't mean that they're legalized by any stretch of the imagination. As part of that ZAP process, any issues that are code identified that would pertain to what we identify as a rooming house and what Ontario Building Code, which is what we regulate, versus the bylaw calls a rooming house, are in fact slightly different. We consider a rooming house any occupancy with 5 or more occupants. And so it's a little different. There are different strictures with respect to the construction side of it and all that kind of stuff. But that's where our mandate comes in on as far as the code basis is concerned.
But do they have to put one of those little reconstruction things on the window that says, I want this, I'm changing this from a single family dwelling to a rooming house? Do they have to inform the community?
In terms of applying for a ZAP application, I'm not aware that they have to. But beyond that, if they get sent to committee, then it gets a little more complicated.
How do I find out then about the fact that they may be trying to turn it into a rooming house?
Well, that is probably privileged information, and I'm not sure if you would be able to find it out. When an application is made, the application is privileged, and it's governed by the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. So,
Perhaps on that note,
yeah.
Yeah, I can go through
In
this.
terms
Yeah.
of that
I can give
journey.
you an example of when that happens. I'll go through the journey and then I'll speak exactly to that. So when someone is applying for a multi-tenant house, this is a journey they have to go through. They first come to MLS and register through our portal. And so that's their intent, that they want to register as an operator to start operating a multi-tenant house. At that point, we don't know what the address is or anything. We don't use that intent for enforcement, okay? So if they're a new operator, like Paolo mentioned, they have to go through Toronto Building. And so that process is they have to apply for a zoning certificate, and then they have to apply for a building permit. So an example of where the community might be informed that they are going through this process is, for example, let's say in your ward there's only allowed 6 multi-tenant house rooms within that property. If someone wanted to operate more than 6 rooms, they would have to go to the Committee of Adjustment and apply for a minor variance. And so at that point, the neighborhood will be informed that this property operator or owner is going to increase the amount of rooms from 6 to 7.
You'll see a blue and white sign pop up on
Exactly,
the yard
yeah.
for Committee of Adjustment.
Yeah.
And there is a 60-meter radius of notification for the neighbors if there is going to be something going to Committee of Adjustment. So.
And then also, if they're making major changes to the building, there'd be one of those white signs.
I'm not sure if that's the building permit process.
Yeah, so what you're talking about, I think is more along the lines of infill. Pardon me, I'm just gonna turn that off. What you're talking about is an infill notice, which, forgive me, I can't see you, so I'm gonna move. The infill notice addresses things like site safety, who the constructor is, nearest medical centers. It has generalized information, and it has some some images of the site that's proposed, et cetera, some details of its construction. Again, all within the privacy framework.
And that's when I organize the neighborhood and go to him.
But infill is only applicable when a new house is constructed in a site that was formerly occupied by a house. So that's infill construction. That's where the infill notice kicks in. If it is a small renovation project where it's a house that they're just doing significant work, but greater than 50% of the exterior walls remain, unfortunately, that does not require an infill notice.
So at that point, I should just ask for an inspection.
You are not entitled to ask for an inspection because you are not the applicant or are not connected with the site per se. Toronto Building is limited with respect to the information that it can share. Again, municipal freedom of
Well, I'm
information.
just wondering, if someone's putting a rooming house beside me, when do they have to tell me, and how do I stop it if I don't like it? They don't. They don't. Okay.
Can one make an FOI for Freedom of Information request?
I'm sorry?
Can one make a
Yes.
Freedom of Information request?
Yeah.
And they charge you $75 to.
I can't speak to the fee, but
I
yeah.
can speak to it, because we have neighbors.
Sure.
I came here tonight. I think a lot of us know, many of us may not, but a lot of us know the background and the intent of the multi-tenant housing protocol. What I would like to know, because I've been at a few of these and seen a lot of this, there are bylaws and regulations that control these houses. If multi-tenant housing is allowable, but it has to be done properly. There has to be an application, it has to be registered, and once it's registered, it has to be kept to a certain set of standards. There's waste, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Given the fact that we're going to be seeing multi-tenant houses, to this gentleman's question, what can we do about it? I understand there's not much we can do about it, except insist somehow that there's enforcement about the rules and regulations about them to make them not so horrible to live next door, to be blunt, and also that they respect and protect the people who are the tenants in these buildings and not putting them into fire traps, homes that garbage and waste isn't properly done. So I'll stop there and say, I want to know about when is this enforcement going to start happening?
Sorry, if you get the main nail on the head, Chris, and this is your bailiwick. Because this was, I rewind a year ago, we were looking at that April 1st date of enforcement.
Partly. I think there's two different things going on here. I think he's mentioning multiplexes, which are now allowed in our area as well, and multi-tenant houses, which are two different things, right?
No, I see what you're saying, but I think he was referring just to rooming houses.
Do you mind if I finish this, just get to the tribunal? Because then it'll answer some of those questions. But it's up to you,
Let's do the
Okay, sure,
enforcement question, because I know that's the biggest.
Hold on a sec, we've all seen this, you're wasting your time, we wanna know what you're doing for enforcement. That's the problem.
That's what I was saying.
We don't need to see the slides. Get right
That's
to it.
exactly what I was saying.
A lot more slides to come. In terms of, to answer,
Behind the slides forever.
I'm not hiding behind slides at all. That's not happening at all.
Okay, guys,
Answer the guy's
quiet
question.
down a bit.
Sure,
Let's
Sorry,
let
thanks. To answer your question, once a property becomes licensed, if it's a licensed multi-tenant house, there are certain criteria that they have to follow, and if they don't follow, then then it's an immediate inspection from our staff, and we can lay charges right away. In terms of the unlicensed multi-tenant houses, which I think is what you're referring to, those are I'm going to go through the process in a sec, but we receive a complaint from the residents, typically, and we perform an inspection. We confirm that it is actually a multi-tenant house under our definition. Once we do confirm that, we issue an order to comply for operating an unlicensed rooming house. After that, we work with the operator. We direct them to the zoning process, to our colleagues in Toronto Buildings and Toronto Fire. And if they do not make movement, if they don't make substantial progress towards getting a license, then we issue charges. And so right now we are in the phase, as the councillor alluded to, we're in the phase now where we are issuing charges. And we're issuing charges at a rapid rate.
Chris, to give more meat to the bone, what does a charge look like?
So a charge, we have a few different options for charges. We have a physical ticket where we can issue a part 1 to the operator in person. And then there's also the part 3 where we let the court decide the fine. So there's 2 different options for a ticket versus a summons to court, basically. For
Part 1 is how much?
a part 1 is $600.
What?
And we can issue part 1s. We can issue a part 1 and then also file a brief, which is a part 3 to the courts, and let the court decide based on how long, especially if we've proven that we've given the operator every opportunity to get a license. That fine, depending on the courts, is likely to be a higher fine.
Who is a person?
The operator.
So you have to find the operator and physically give it to him. And if it's out of the province, out of the country, out of the jurisdiction.
We don't have anything out of the province, out of the country. We're pretty good at finding them. Yeah. Sorry, I think we should go. Wait, hold on. So we're going to go back to presentation.
I will be very quick, I promise.
And
Yeah.
then we'll get back to the question.
Okay, so Toronto building process, and then you gotta go to Toronto fire. So,
You're right.
as Paolo mentioned, the definition.
There's a lot of people that have a lot of questions here regards that. So before you go on, maybe you can, because this lady here is saying a very good point.
So Chris
Here
is gonna
you
go
are
into
talking
detail
about
on
this
all of
without
that
answering it.
stuff. So Chris will
Sir,
go
so
into
we're
detail
gonna,
on that.
we're trying to, I'll moderate to make sure there's a good balance of questions.
Okay.
Point taken, I think, like, let's get through the
I
slides.
will
and
end
get
on
to
this
the-
slide, and then we can move to Chris. I know you guys all have questions for him. Okay, so, Toronto Fire, you have to submit a fire safety plan if there's 5 or more people that are living in this home, right? So I know there's questions about occupancy. If we find out that occupancy is greater, we'll make the referral to Toronto Fire so that they know they have to get that fire safety plan. They'll have a fire inspection, right? They'll apply for the license. They have to have property maintenance plans to address all those issues you talked about, someone did about waste, pests, anything that's under any of the bylaws that we enforce, property standards. They have to have a plan for all of those things, and the tenants need to know. So you'll pay for your license. MLS will do an inspection. If it's a renewal, fire will do an inspection as well. Like we said, if there's anything that we see when we're doing our inspections that is not under our purview, we will refer it to that division. Once your license is issued, so if you are licensed, so let's say somebody is licensed in Ward 20, and I think there was a question about what happens and how can we take their license away, right? If someone's not complying with their license, MLS can appeal to the multi-tenant housing tribunal, right? And this is a council-directed tribunal. It's made up of members that are not a part of the city. And so we will suggest that this license should either be revoked, it should be suspended, or that there's conditions that need to be applied to it. If the tribunal decides that this person or this operator no longer should have this license, they will revoke that license, right? And it's so their responsibility to decide what happens with that license, and they're a third party that does that. So I will stop there because there's probably questions about that, and then questions for Chris as well.
All right, I'm going to do my best to pick off folks who had their hands.
One more sentence and be done with it.
Okay.
How many licenses are there in our ward?
Okay, so
The reason I ask is that you say you can go after these people if they have a license and they're violating the conditions of there are none. We want people to become licensed. I've said it all.
Exactly. So the context and the focus is on the, let's call them bad faith operators who are intentionally running an unlicensed. That's that's the entirety of all the joints. Nancy?
Hi, I just want to know, I have an example from years ago. There was an inquest, the Rupert House Hotel on Queen Street. I was a worker many years ago at the welfare department. Myself and a number of other young workers brought up issues about a dangerous rooming house. We were told, mind your own business, do your job, it's none of your business. He's serving a need, hard to house people. Well, one Christmas week, the place burned down and at least 10 people are dead. Wow. So I don't even know if they know how many people are dead, because how much digging can you do in a burned out building? I don't really know. But I mean, we were told there was an inquest. I believe there was a lot of lying at that inquest, because a lot of us that would have spoken up were not called and were told, oh no, we don't need you there. So I'm just wondering how much weight is given to this. It's more than just garbage, litter, noise, parties. People die, and I have been into hundreds and hundreds of rooming houses, and I can tell you in the city of Toronto, There were only, out of the hundreds I visited, maybe 2 that I thought were in compliance, no matter how many complaints were put in. I'm just wondering like from previous cases, has the city learned their lesson? I'm looking at your slides and I'm seeing the same process. Oh, well, we're going to talk to them, we're going to warn them, we're going to this, a $600 fine. That owner I happen to know because he lived in my neighborhood, he had a variety store. He went to Greece because I believe there was no extradition treaty at that time. He never came back, his family was still here running his variety store and whatever, because probably he would have been hauled in, I don't know what the charge would be, manslaughter, who knows, right? But the point is the city knew that this was a dangerous place for staff to be visiting. They told us we were to still go there regardless of health and safety, workplace violence issues. There were God knows what going on there, and more, I believe 10 or more, we don't even know, at least 10 people were dead. So has the city, you were, probably not even born at that time. So has the city forgotten all about this case and, oh, well, we'll wait till it happens again and again and maybe we'll have another inquest? This is my, enough already.
I think every experience like that is a learning experience,
Yeah.
as tragic as it is. I can speak to the fact that we do have an excellent partnership today, whereas there were perhaps silos in the past that were barriers to those partnerships. Whenever MLS responds or TFS responds to a site that has been identified as an MTH, referrals are handed back and forth across all 3 teams, and the response is virtually instantaneous on our part. We attend, MLS attends, TFS attends, and these days I think the seriousness of those attendances is far and away a different experience than
Well, I'm hoping so, because I do wonder, when we have so many of these houses and there's not even one licensed one.
Yeah, no.
Like how,
The
this is
licensing
point,
process
right?
itself is a
Yeah.
time-consuming
Yeah.
and convoluted process.
Yeah.
Whether many of these homes will actually achieve licensed status is something to be seen at this point. They do have hurdles to go through from an operational standpoint.
Because we have seen it recently
But from
in
an
our
illegal
neighborhood.
standpoint, we do not let them continue. We do address them. We do bring them court orders. Not court orders. We do bring them Part 3 violations. MLS does. We do. And at this point, we are beginning prosecutions in this process.
And the fine,
It's
why
evolving.
is it so low? Because when
That's
you're
for a
pulling
Part 1
in
violation.
$10,000
That's
a
very
month and in
different.
bungalow,
A Part 3 violation, the
fine is
minimum, the
peanuts.
maximum fine is $50,000 for an individual,
Yeah.
$500,000 for a corporation. I'm actually attending a case tomorrow at trial where I have levied 4 charges against the corporation. So that's a potential maximum fine of $1 million,
Okay.
assuming that the court gives
Folks,
us a
there's a lot of questions. I'm going to do my best to call people as I see them. Just try to keep it concise. A lot of them are very similar to each other. Sir, I know.
Are there fees involved with the licenses
Yeah.
and the permits?
Yeah, there is. So I can speak to the license fees. So it's $27 per room and then $157 for our inspection. And then Toronto Building has fees associated with the zoning process. And then Toronto Fire has fees associated with the fire safety plan.
Okay, that's why you end up getting a lot of the illegal places.
Yeah, that are not licensed or nor are the owners interested in
But
licensing
the
them.
fine should be a lot greater so that it pays to get licensed.
We'll talk about that. Sir.
My name is Mike McKenzie. I've been in Scarborough since 1980, and I love Scarborough. I've been in my building, old condominium, since 1986. So initially you said, the first slide we asked questions, so I gotta take you guys back there, right? Have an issue with enforcement. Because the reality is this, whether we like it or not, you'll get the rooming houses. City Hall has a policy, and you know this, build, 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 whether you like it or not. So I want to deal with when you have these entities in your neighborhood, you know what your issue is going to be? Standards. Are they cutting the grass? Are they hoarding? So let me tell you in terms of my experience in Scarborough Village. I've been to 32 buildings, toured with managers, condominium, rental, doesn't matter. You know what the issue is? A lack of standard. And let me just ask a quick question. City Hall had a review recently with MLS. I think I heard something about that. Can anyone confirm that?
Property standards, yes.
Yes. Was there any opportunity for people like me or the folks here to provide input?
I believe there was. I wasn't directly involved, but I believe there was. Yes.
I didn't get that memo. Okay, so here's the problem. Earlier today, I went to my garage, and this is fire code. And the stairwell has been blocked with snow, and I've written to my condominium management and board, and you know what these people do? They don't respond. From what I understand, a blocked stairwell, whether it's summer or winter, is a breach of the fire code. A couple of Fridays ago, I almost slipped. Our walkway was not cleared, it was icy. What I'm saying basically, if you're going to talk about standard, who's going to help the operators define operational and management standards? And let's talk about pest control. In my neighborhood, every building, condominium or not, we're looking at bed bugs, mice, roaches, and there's a new one called feral ants, a microscopic ants, which can set up in your living room 5 different locations. They have 5 different queens. So who is going to define the standards? So I'm against enforcement, and I'll tell you why. It should be proactive inspection, not depending on people to complain to get MLS in. Just like the restaurant has the, what is green, whatever it is, these rooming houses should be inspected. It shouldn't be based on Mike McKenzie calling 311, whatever. It should be a proactive inspection. And that's the only thing that's going to work. And every standard has to be defined. Let's talk about pest control. Let me finish. None of these managers in Scarborough understand how to even deal with cockroaches. First of all, the tenants are complaining. They only treat the unit when you complain. Well, the roaches are smart. They run from this unit to the other units, right? There's no standard in the city to bind these management for a yearly all building clear out. So in my neighborhood, they're being bitten by the bed bugs. In you end like roaches. So you jump from education, standard and enforcement, but if you don't get the standard right, and I'm telling you, you guys are way off the mark in terms of standard. And here's another thing. I love to run the fire. Let me finish. I love to run the fire. I love MLS. But some of these enforcement officers have been confrontational. I don't know why. Where the complainant becomes the victim. All right? Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. There are some really good suggestions here on enforcement. Can you give us context to proactive versus responsive?
For sure. It's different for MLS. We enforce many different bylaws. We have staff that go in parks for dogs off leash. We have staff that deal with rental apartment buildings. We have my staff that deal with multi-tenant houses. We deal with all those things. I wanted to touch on the snow and ice that you mentioned. The snow and ice is a priority 1. We operate on a priority response model. That is our top priority. That's an emergency for us. So if you call 311, I know you don't like to call 311. I know that's not, or submit an online complaint.
No, I do.
You do? Okay, you do. All right. But I said you didn't want it, you wanted to be proactive. You want us to be proactive and be able to see it as opposed to responding to your complaint. And I understand that. My colleague here from Investigation Services, Andrew Orlick, is here, and his team deals with that type of complaint, snow and ice, in a condo building, and that would be his team that deals with them. And so that would be a priority. So if you do call about that, I know it's an issue, and the fire issue you mentioned in terms of getting your car out or slipping and falling, God forbid, but that's an issue. And then I think Raman's going to talk about the licensing side of that.
Yeah, so I just want to mention, you mentioned the dine safe and all that. So we do an annual inspection, right, of the multi-tenant house once it's licensed. I think one of the most difficult things for Chris's team is some of these homes from the outside, you can't tell that it's a multi-tenant house. It's not like a condo or an apartment, right? So it's no, you may know because you live in the neighborhood, but our staff don't live in the neighborhood. So when we're driving and if we're doing proactive enforcement, what's gonna get us into the house? We see waste, right? The waste is all over the place. Once we get there and we investigate, that might turn into a multi-tenant house investigation, right?
Can I just quickly add something? So folks, I mentioned at the top, we have a working group and we are taking in addresses that you guys flag, and Chris and his team work to address them by
How many
fire.
charges have been laid? So no license is issued, there's no bylaw officers. You guys are talking in circles. How many bylaw officers have you got?
We have 22.
In this area or altogether? How many licenses?
How many licenses in the ward?
So after a year and a half, you can.
Zero.
Zero. Yeah.
How many
So what's that tell you?
How many
You're operating illegally.
No, so I guess, Chris, if you can speak to what is the progress, if any, of taking these bad faith operators who are running illegal rooming houses towards licensing? What is the progress, if any?
Yeah, so our staff, for Ward 20 specifically, because I don't want to give citywide data because it's skewed in terms of, it's not relevant, downtown is not relevant to Ward 20. So our staff, our enforcement staff have issued 53 orders to comply for operating a multi-tenant house without a license. 17 are now open. So we have had compliance to those orders without laying charges because of the fact that they either reduced occupancy, which you could say is a good thing or is a bad thing, because then we have potential evictions happening and people with probably very little other options as where to live. And so then the other side is there are many properties that are working towards the licensing process. As Paolo mentioned, it's a long process. It's not like a 30-day process and you have a license. It is lengthy, and operators our staff are getting regular updates on what is going on, especially for those 53 orders that we issued, there's 17 open. My staff are checking up with the operator to say, hey, okay, where are we at now? I issued the order in December 2025. It's February. Where are we at with this order?
So can we cross-reference your orders with the list we provided through the association?
Yeah,
Because
sure. That's what the working
group applied, and I bought him tiny. He paid his $50, and now he's got a free pass to do what he wants because it takes forever.
So Chris, we met with you back in 2024 when this was first started.
Yes.
And we were excited because we thought, great, they're going to be licensing these illegal rooming houses, which have been running rampant throughout our neighborhoods, very destructive. And you told us there was going to be an education phase, and then there was going to be an enforcement phase. So that has come and gone. We provided you a list of 90 homes that were suspected rooming houses. 100% we were sure. We didn't want to give you anything that was incorrect. Not one of them has been licensed yet. Because it does not fall within the definitions. You talk about once they're licensed, we can do this. But until they're licensed, you can't do anything. And those are the problem rooming houses. And they're rampant, and these landlords are organized, and the intent is to make the most money while they wait for the COA approvals, then to build another big monster home. We're terrified to see these fourplexes come to life, to then become a rooming house times 4 that no one can enforce. We have seen nothing to show us that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's the same. We've waited 2 years and there's no improvement. How many licenses are issued in Ward 20 right now for legal rooming houses? Zero. So what does that tell you?
We have several applications in process.
Does that tell you that there is something wrong with the definition of a multi-tenant house? Or does it tell you that we need some other bylaw that will handle these? Because this is not going away. It's actually getting worse. And if you look at the COA data, 52% of the applications that go to the COA in Scarborough are in Scarborough Southwest. It's right here, I can give it to you. 1,605 in Scarborough Southwest, and the next highest in Scarborough is in Scarborough Center, 427. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
That points to a real problem. The data supports it.
But
No
every
one is
CO,
do-
every C of A is not MTH. Like
No,
just to have an
that's not what-
application.
no.
No, I know you.
I'm
Chris, just to
saying the
unpack that a
fact.
bit, Mayor's point's very valid, is that they're using this period until the C of A to run these illegal rooming
The
houses.
COA data supports that there is something going on. Back in the 70s, they called it blockbusting. Do you know what blockbusting is?
No.
It's, okay, well, look it up, because that's what's happening in our neighborhoods, and we need someone to figure out how to fix that. It's a municipal problem. This whole thing about registering a legal multi-tenant house, it's wonderful if you can get someone to do it, but they will never ever register. That's the problem.
The issue, okay, so I will give you a slight breakdown of that list of, I think it was.
Just one more thing.
Yes.
Grass and garbage is a byproduct of the real problem. You need to address the real problem. We don't care about garbage and grass. You know, charging someone $20 because they don't cut the grass on their property bill, who cares? Fix the real problem. We have been waiting for years.
Yeah.
So can I just quickly ask a question? Is the problem occupancy? Is the problem that the homes are too big and they're in the neighborhood? Can you just provide some more context on, is it, like, what are, like,
Excuse me, I can answer that. No one wants to live in a ghetto. That's all there is to
So
it.
I can tell you, there's two types of rooming houses. We have what we consider intentional homes that have very destructive people in there that are put in there intentionally. Sometimes they're referred to as RONAs. And we have the tenants that are being taken advantage of by these landlords. And they will not tell you what's going on because they don't want to be evicted. And it's very, very sad. There's been a death, there was a death in, where was it?
Well, there's an ants and someone's drowned.
Yeah, it's, and we, like I said, we have been waiting. We met with you in 2024. We told you, you heard some ladies talking about the intimidation from these slumlords, the neighbors, and I don't see any improvement. And you know what? It's wonderful that you can do all these things when a multi-tenant house is licensed. But what do you do when they don't?
Right.
Other than telling them to cut their grass and clean up their garbage.
So we bring them to the court. We're gonna charge them. Like, that's gonna solve the problem, because we make our referrals to our colleagues in Toronto Buildings, we make our referrals to our colleagues in Toronto Fire. With the 3 enforcement divisions that are all here today, we can make a difference on all these properties. We do need to know about them. I know there's concerns raised in terms of bringing them forward, but we do need to know about them. That list of 87, I think it was 87 that you gave my staff, we investigated every single one. Many of them were not MTHs.
That's right. They don't fall within the
Yes, I know, and I know that's what you're
definition.
saying. I know that's what you're saying. You're looking for,
those.
right,
Who
but
do we
there.
go to? Who do we go to for the ones that don't fall in your
So if
perfect definition?
if the occupancy is 5 or more, then that falls under the building code and the fire code.
There's like 15 people living in one
So then
house with mattresses in the kitchen.
Right.
With the
Fit the code, the definition.
Yeah, but they tell them when they come, this is what they need.
That's the other part.
Marina's point. If there are about 5 people, sorry.
So we go by 4 rooms or more.
Does that include basement? That's a problem. So if we're talking about, on average, 3-bedroom, 2 to 3-bedroom home with another 1 or 2 bedrooms downstairs, that fits your definition.
Right.
So what's the problem?
If there's shared kitchen and shared.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course it would be. So again, I don't understand what the loophole is.
The loophole is the fact that we did an inspection and some of these properties did not meet that definition. There's no loophole, it's just a matter of.
Because the landlord threatens you guys give them notice before you go there.
No,
We see people moving out in the middle, whereas fire, you guys can go there at any point. 100%. Right? You can show up.
Okay, hold on a second, folks.
You don't have too much time, and you know.
Yeah, one at a time, guys, folks, we recognize, we count on the folks in front of us to carry the system. We're obviously not happy with the system and their flaws. Some of that can't be fixed by Chris. It has to be fixed by the mayor and the planning committee chair, and of course the province in terms of turnarounds on the court cases. But to clarify this thing, because I think this is a stark gap. Folks have identified houses. What were you're saying, Chris, that the bulk of them were not identified as MTHs. Was that because of the lack of occupants or less rooms?
Like the lack of rooms. Some of them were basement apartments. Some of them with just 2 rooms, and then a family upstairs. There was all different scenarios. But I do want to touch on something that was said. We do not let the landlord know before we go. We go to the house first. We go to the occupants first. That's our number one. That's our number one investigative technique. We're not going to like say, hey, we're going to come at this time. We don't do that. Now, if the first 3 or 4 inspections are unsuccessful and or the tenants are, like understandably maybe intimidated by our staff, then we would reach out to the landlord because we need to get in the property to investigate the complaint. So we do not go to the operator first.
A gentleman with black t-shirt.
Sorry. I'm Sean Hillman. I'm a Cliffside resident, and I serve the Durham region as their lead ethicist. I just wanted to add to your question another register, a safety register in our neighborhood on our street. I'm on Vanbrugh. That hasn't been mentioned because we talked about grass. I'm going to keep it as tight as I can, and garbage. But I want to add, in our experience, we have like an enormous amount of people, children, so there's a child safety aspect as well. Most of the neighborhood will ignore what's happening out of fear, which is what happened in our experience. Some of us interact to keep civility going. So there were also countless numbers of cars on the properties. So probably people know where we're talking about, and there's more than one place. Yeah, there's more than one place with cars. So multiple cars, repairs, possible commercial activities, but also military-aged males doing protective patrols, sleeping in their cars. This is on Vanbrugh. This is very dangerous signals of criminality. And I've had police at our house because we had our car stolen. I know I'm adding another element here, and I'm shaking because our neighborhood, until January, when all of this new process started and when the new term started, I think, from what I'm understanding. Anyhow, people are clearing out because there's no heat from our understanding, so there's no human way to abide in these places. So my point is, there's some sort of connectivity, I think, and in some of our experience with criminality, because there's pictures of people doing criminal activities out in the neighborhood too that are somehow seemingly connected to these groups. Also, all of the automobiles and these strange other signals. And am I mentioning everything? There was something else. Sorry, I'm also feeling a lot around this, so it's interfering with my processing. But thank you for hearing me.
Thank you for being brave and sharing.
Thank you.
Chris, I don't know if you're familiar with the property the gentleman was speaking to, but how do we
71 and 73 Vanbrugh, and we've had this problem actually for many, many years. We talked about it at the Ice Cream Social in Sandown Park, and I know all of this stuff takes a long, long time. Sorry, do you have a question?
Oh, no, sorry, I was just telling our staff to write the address.
71 and 7. And we had a community pamphlet by one of our amazing community members who did it anonymously, and some of the language like this is behavior-based, not personal, and things like this is fantastic. So I think we shared it with your office, but I'll like share it again, because there's a lot of, it's just fairly well-organized way of looking at it. But the safety piece is not mentioned much, and it is like, it's foundational to our experience. I have a very young daughter. She stopped sleeping at night after not just the activities outside, but a specific event with our car being stolen. And so we had a task force constable come to interview us, and it's recorded, specifically about the 1,000% increase in car thefts in our neighborhood. Anyhow, I'm not trying to get into another issue, but I think they intersect. Thanks.
So if our team on the multi-tenant houses team goes to a home that's suspected as a multi-tenant house and there's criminal activity, we refer that to Toronto Police Services, right? That's something that our team is not, we are bylaw enforcement officers. Our team cannot handle those types of complaints, right?
Is there any communication, like, is it too siloed that if some signal shows up, that you can alert another? Like, I mean, I'm sending information to police.
Evidence that we see when we're out with an inspection that is criminal activity,
Who do you share it with?
then we'll share it with the police,
Right.
yes, with Toronto
Right,
Police
yeah.
Services. Immediately,
And
our
we are
team will
too.
do that, right? And
one thing that's happening is there's no police response anyhow. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Patricia. That's a vote. Yeah.
5-point memoir after listening to what's going on here. First of all, call Parthy and his team. I did. They were very, very useful. They can't do everything, but they are useful. 2, if they're noisy, call the non-emergency police line. Not 311, the non-emergency police line. They will show up quite often, and essentially things do get resolved. 3, if they do something stupid, like they did my next door and we're setting off fireworks, call the nice firefighters over there. They will come. Just make sure that there's enough evidence that they can do something with it. And finally, as a group, get the neighbors together, give them all this information, and if necessary, contract an outside lawyer. They can do things like find out what's the information in terms of the loan, what's the information in terms of the insurance. Did they tell the bank that this was a rooming house? Did they tell the insurer it's a rooming house? And if not, they can inform them, not you, because they know how to do it legally. Sorry to take your time.
That's very good.
Yeah, okay, so I've gone through this loop, right? The house on our street, initially, we had that issue you were talking about. We had cars. The people were eventually taken out of that place in handcuffs. The federal police were there, the provincial and the city police, all on our street. Okay, fine, they're gone. Someone else has bought it. Again, it's like an investor, doesn't live there. Okay, so back in May, I opened up a ticket on this. 311 called them, said, we got an issue. There's tons of cars here. There's people, they're obviously, they're not related. They all arrive with suitcases and they're going in and out of the house. Okay, finally, I think it was in October, the inspection happened. It was a unlicensed multi-tenant, and they said that. And they were out of compliance. Who knows what was going on? I know that house and the fact that if they have people living in the basement, there was not proper egress for the number of people that are living there. Okay, inspection was done, okay. You know, the fire building, I guess all those people came in, had a look at it. Nope, this is not right. So they were given 60 days to comply, okay. So 60 days is over. They go back to inspect. I noticed just prior to the inspection, a lot of people left the house with their suitcases. So the inspection was done. I get an email back saying, oh, they're in compliance and they're looking to get license. Okay, so now, this is a few weeks later, all the cars are back. All the people are there. At the end of the month, people are coming in with suitcases. People are going out. And sometimes they have garbage bags. It's, you know, there's no control. I mean, my wife, okay, this is where we're at. We're watching all this, and we're thinking, why are we living here? And we're thinking, you know, is it time that we pull, 40 years I've lived there. Is it time to pull the string and get the hell out before this all goes to crap? Because, like, right now, fine, you can say, do this, do that, great, did it, right? But where are we at? Same place. So, you know, oh, and one other thing, blockbusting, you should know this term. What blockbusting is, excuse me, I'm talking. Okay, blockbusting is where investors, developers come into an area, they'll buy up a home, and they'll make it very uncomfortable for all the other neighbors. In fact, like, you know, lots of cars, people coming in with suitcases all the time, all that sort of thing. It lowers the price of the houses around, which then they go and buy it. It's a method well known within urban geography for manipulating prices for the advantages of developers. And, you know, Scarborough, the older part of Scarborough is very vulnerable to this because we have older people living in homes that are moving out. And these are smaller houses, and they're on large lots. And the developers are looking at this and they're licking their chops because they buy 4 houses, they got an acre, right? And then they can build multi-dwelling, buildings and stuff like that. So, you know what? I've been to your information sessions before, and it's great. I'm glad that you're getting some guardrails around this, but you know, it's in the doing. And right now, I'm thinking like, say, I love living in Scarborough. I feel lucky I lived here. I brought my family up here, but hell, if this is the way it's going, I don't want it to be a ghetto. And I'm not going to stick around and watch it fall.
So our staff maintain a spreadsheet. After we do an inspection, we close that file. Like I said, there was I think 53 orders that we issued, and now there's only 17 open. Those 53, we do maintain those properties, and we do circle back to see what the update is. It's just like you said, like we're very aware of the issues that are occurring in terms of people bringing them in, they operate an unlicensed multi-tenant house, we show up, they either hide stuff or like, we know the tactics. Like there's nothing new being said here that our staff are not aware of. I do appreciate, of course, all the information. At the same time, we go back to these properties to make sure, like the property that you mentioned, which I'd like to know the address of. If you could, I'll give you my card after, I'll find you.
Sure.
And I want to get that address off you. And go back and confirm how are they operating. Reach out to the tenants again and say, hey, can we come by for an inspection? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the proactiveness that.
If you reach out and they'll
If you don't tell them, you just said now, you're going to tell them when you're coming for an inspection. Yeah, well, they're going to tell the landlord, they're all in on it.
The only way to get in the property is to go through the tenants.
You know you're coming.
Or just knock on the door and they let you in, type of thing.
Yeah, and then the landlord makes the tenant leave because the tenant let you in the front door, so they kick them out because they have no protection under the Landlord-Tenant Act because they are living in a rooming house, and because of all the long wait times at the provincial landlord-tenant board, it develops more and more and more of these multi-unit unlicensed homes because the landlords are cutting up the houses rather than running them whole to families and to people. And then the vulnerable folks that don't have money and already have mental health issues, substance abuse, whatever, are in these environments that are completely corrupt and completely being taken advantage of, and no one's talking about those people either. Like, you know, and you're asking us to like rat them out or whatever, but like we had one on our street who like the landlord wouldn't even let him put the garbage in his garbage can because he couldn't be bothered to pay for a bigger garbage can for his 8,000 tenants in the basement. And then the tenant like got evicted. Like they're like, you have to leave like in a week, and there's no recourse for them because they have no protections under the current provincial or the municipal law. So what's happening to those vulnerable people?
So when we perform our inspections, we speak to the tenants, obviously. We provide them with literature on the Residential Tenancies Act, legal aid. We give them we have a one-stop shop brochure that we give to all the tenants to make sure they know their rights, that they know exactly where they can turn to should there be a problem, just like you're describing. Like everything.
They don't have any protection when you live in a multi-tenant home, when you rent a room and you share with other people. So you can give them the central intake line for a shelter, but right now, if anyone's ever tried to get a bed for someone in a shelter right now, there's no beds anywhere, so then they end up in the street or in an even more exploitive or vulnerable situation. So what are we doing to address that factor as well? Like,
all of our staff are trained on eviction prevention, on the landlord-tenant board, the Residential Tenancies Act. This is all brand new to them, and it's definitely not legislation that we enforce or that we typically educate on, but we do have literature that we provide, and our staff are, because there are two options when we issue an order to comply for an unlicensed multi-tenant house. There are two options. There are get a license, or there is reduced occupancy, right? There's the two options. We direct them to get a license. That's the objective, because we do not want to have further evictions, and we do not want to, like you said, inundate the shelter system with more people because it's full, and I understand that. And our staff do focus on that 100%. We do work closely with the Housing Secretariat, and we've had lots of training with them, and we have done a lot of work on that end specifically, I can tell you that.
Is over here. I think a lot of the frustration at our ward level is we see a lot of the people who are involved in these illegal rooming houses are also like, this is a life cycle of illegal buildings. That's kind of talking about that. Is there the opportunity to work with the province where on a legal building there are many reports and that needs to be addressed too. But there's many reports at the provincial level of tax evasion, of how much is lost in taxes and revenues in a legal building. These folks, I mean, these are deliberate actors. I think this is the frustration of this ward is they're not like, oh shucks, this is my first rooming house, I'm trying to do good. They're deliberate actors. And is there opportunity to share information with the province that these are businesses that are being run? Because what we see is cash being handed out. So it's supremely profitable to be running these rooming houses like this. And much like in the building in this ward, where illegal builders have choked out any legitimate builders, it's choking out any legitimate rooming house operator by running, by having a pure cash business. Is there an opportunity to share information when you've identified that there's a business running at this property, to share that, whether that's provincially or federally with the CRA, just to flag that as a way of helping you enforce, to crack down on these these operators.
Yeah, we can look into that. We haven't looked into that, I can tell you that. We definitely can. I would think there might be some MFIPA issues with that in terms of freedom of information, in terms of sharing that information with even the province and the federal government. But we can look into that. It's a good idea, because I do understand your point in terms of, and it's a good one, in terms of the fact that, yeah, it's squeezing out the potential license.
You can't run a legitimate business.
Yeah.
On the license side, we do share this information with MPAC. They will ask the assessments. Can you send us a list of licensed multi-tenant houses? So we do it on the license side. Like Chris said, it's a little bit more difficult on his side, but I think it's a great idea. And if that's something we can do to even push enforcement, it makes sense.
Goes across the
Sorry,
whole
gentleman in the
network,
back,
right?
blue.
Yeah.
Greg, I think easy questions. $600 fine is no deterrent, so how do you go about raising that to a level that's going to make these guys think? Why are these guys allowed to operate at all before they get a license, as opposed to, you're in compliance now, get your license, and we're good months down the road? And what is the time frame for when you call 311? This gentleman mentioned 6-7 months. That's been our experience too, before a ticket's even evaluated, and then they get a warning or a compliance notice or their $600 fine, and then months and months and months go by. So those are my 3 questions.
Just working backwards, please let my office know, and with the MTH working group, so that gets on the list for Chris and team to go through. On your the first question, I think
we call your office, then what happens and how long?
We'll circle back on that list. I'm not sure if that house is on that list, but when we conclude the meeting, we'll do the one-on-ones with folks. But the gentleman raises a point, I think, Chris, and I want to get a sense, because we also want to see solutions. We hear obvious frustration. What's your reflection? Because it's clear, the $600, the giving them time, a compliance order, it's not changing behavior. It's the same life cycle. Paul hit it on the head. It's a life cycle of run it, and then they build a big mansion. What's your reflection on, these aren't deterrents?
So the $600 is, we can issue the $600 fine every time we perform an inspection and confirm that they're operating. Obviously, the Part 3 route would be the route where we have the court decide the fines, as Paolo referred to. That's another option, that's another tool in our toolbox. So we do have the 2 options. So it's not just a $600 fine, and that's all we have, and we have nothing else we can possibly do. There's significantly more than that. And I would also say, when we do refer to our colleagues in Toronto Buildings and Toronto Fire, they also have a large fines that they can issue, and significantly more authority than MLS does.
How long do all those steps take?
The steps should not be taking very long at all. The steps. Very.
I can respond to
I would
that.
say a couple of weeks. It would be.
Just as a quick comparison, what's the maximum fine for cutting a tree down illegally?
We're talking like 5,000.
So when we get a referral from Chris's group, for example, we have to respond within 2 days. Have to. And our objective is to attend on that first day. It's not something that we play with. From the standpoint of how we prefer to deal with these things, we prefer to deal with these things with a Part 3 violation. And that's where our maximum fine is up to $50,000. In the process of the gestation of this, we are now at the point where we are starting to move several of these files to prosecution. Because it does take a time to get to prosecution, but our timelines in that are actually also being shortened up. Formerly, we had been giving upwards of 8 to 10 months. We are looking at bringing that timeline even tighter, to be honest with you.
Tighter to a month?
A month is not feasible. You have to give someone enough time to do something.
A month is way too long.
I understand, but what I'm saying is when we observe the violation, we have a violation. Right then and there, we can charge. So we give them a little bit of time to see if they are, you know, a reasonable actor or a non-reasonable actor.
Why don't we shut them down and force them?
We do not have the authority to simply walk in and push people out and tell people how to manage their house.
But in the meantime,
we don't have that authority. We do have the authority to tell them that they're not doing something that they're allowed to do, and we do have the authority to take them to prosecution when they prove to us that they have no interest in complying.
but in the meantime, they're making $4,000 a month.
Understood, which is why we are asking for higher and higher fines.
Okay, on that solution, who, is that ultimately the city that determines the fine structure? Because we're seeing a clear desire for higher deterrence.
That's mandated by the Provincial Offences Act. The Provincial Offences Act mandates Part 3 violations and Part 1 violations as well, actually. So those fines are mandated by the Act. The Act basically says on each individual charge, an individual may be charged or fined up to $50,000. A corporation may be fined up to $500,000 on the first offense. A subsequent offense, that fine goes up for both. So things change as we move through the evolution of this process.
Does that roll up into that?
Pardon me?
What ministry under Ford's government does that roll up into that? Ministry of Housing, Attorney General?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, yeah, I think it's the AG. Yeah, the AG does. Yeah. I mean, we're all provincial offenses officers.
I think it's Consumer Protection Act. I think it's business consumer protection.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, should be though.
I appreciate everything that's been said tonight from the audience and staff. Chris, I think you said it, it doesn't meet the definition of an MTH. So now, how do we protect those tenants whereby, let's just call him an irresponsible landlord, owns a house and he has tenants. So I think Mississauga and Brampton got it right. And I hate to say this, they recently introduced a bylaw that if anybody owns a house and rents out any space in that house, whether it's your basement, apartment, a room, etc., you have to be licensed, period. And you know what? It's like Airbnb. The way that whole system's set up now, people on the Airbnb platform, they used to not claim the rental income. Now every penny is claimed as income. Airbnb remits HST to the federal government. They remit municipal accommodation tax to the city. I think there's an opportunity here, Parsi. I think there's an opportunity here, Parsi, where you could perhaps introduce a member's motion to City Council or Planning and Housing Committee to say, you know what? Multi-tenant housing is for this group of accommodations, but we need to have another policy that captures those that are not under that jurisdiction. And that is to say, it's time to require all owners of homes to be licensed if they rent out their basement, a room, whatever. Because at the end of the day, it should all be about safety.
Completely.
There's election this year, so these should be election issues.
Yeah, if I could see something kind of like 30,000 square feet, and guys, jump in if you think I'm off. But part of why we are experiencing frustration, I think, is this approach to housing that errs on the side of preservation of housing. Because we're seeing the obvious frustration. We're clear the deterrence is not strong enough. There aren't the tools to vacate or reduce. The city philosophically is erring on the side of housing and supply.
Development.
So, Paul, to your thing, certainly can take that and advance it to what extent it's successful, I don't know.
I think our
But-
society is at that point in time.
Partly,
You know,
is it
we've
housing
seen,
or is
we've
it
seen what's
slums?
gone on in Brampton, with the tragedies there. You know, this winter in Toronto, we've had a lot of fatalities, ironically from second floor fires. You know, and I know with the building code, the developers are always trying to erode the building code because they claim it costs too much money to build something safe. But you know what? We've got a very big problem in this city. Our homelessness is growing like crazy. Poverty is growing like crazy. And Chris, you sent me a beautiful email saying, you know, generally rooming houses give rents of $4,800 a month. We don't see that in Scarborough Southwest. In fact, I don't see that anywhere in Scarborough. Okay, I can't speak for the downtown core, but we've got to start making changes. We got to start acknowledging the facts of what's actually taking place. I'm sure Toronto Fire could tell you they've gone in to see horrific places, and they, I think, can help homeowners. You know, there's a grant program for these operators of multi-tenant houses. How about let's making that offer to existing homeowners that want to have a legal basement apartment or create another dwelling. Help incentivize private homeowners to be part of the housing solution rather than allowing investors. Investors are great, but you know what? They're not the answer to our housing woes.
Thank you, Paul. Fire folks, fire guys, what are the examples of code violations you guys have laid, and how is it similar to the deterrence fines that building and MLS has?
So good evening, everybody. I'm Gordon Chabot. I'm the acting division chief for inspections and enforcement with Toronto Fire. So thank you for inviting us here to speak to this. I'm clearly hearing that there's some frustration in the process. I can reassure you that our partnership with MLS and Toronto Buildings has strengthened, and the referrals are flowing much better since this process. We have similar fine structure than the Toronto Building Services has as well, because we are also provincial offenses officers. So it's $500,000 for a corporation and $50,000 for an individual. Those are the maximums, and we take enforcement very serious. We like I said, we pass referrals back and forth. Some of the violations that we see that we address right away, lack of smoke alarms, lack of carbon monoxide alarms, and you bet we focus on exiting, and there's a lot of fire separation issues and fire doors, so we enforce all those items. It's all out of the Ontario Provincial Fire Code.
If I can just say one thing, thank you guys for being you. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can a citizen refer to like the fire for inspection, or if there's concerns, or does it have to be from the bylaw? Can a citizen like refer like a house or something that we think is not in fire compliance to the fire department?
Yes. However, Toronto Fire, we have a duty to assess every complaint. And so we need more information than just we think there's too many people living in that house. That's not enough for us to exercise our authority.
Would a valid complaint be that there's only one exit in a basement apartment where multiple people are living? Would that be considered a fire violation? That would be...
Maybe, because one exit might be okay, depending on how the space is occupied.
Okay. And is that on the Toronto Fire site that we can report to? Is it on the website?
Yes, there's multiple ways that you can send us referrals or complaints. TFS inspections at toronto.ca is the best way, because it's in writing and it'll get a stick handle to the right. 311 is also very effective.
John,
what do you need in order to make the complaint then?
So, every complaint Toronto Fire has to assess. We have to make sure that we can exercise our authority of entry. So it needs to have there needs to be like an example that there is a fire hazard present. It has to be relatable to the fire code.
Tires in the front yard, cars up on blocks, that type of thing, or something that we know
Those
is
are,
internal.
I understand those are not nice to look at, but they're not a fire hazard.
Don,
It's
to
a
your
fair question, though.
point, feeding the suspected rooming house to the working group allows all eyes, not just fire, MLS, building code.
But would like 12 cars in a residential backyard not be a fire
Nope,
hazard?
not even, like, I understand
What if
it's,
it's a fire with 12 cars in someone's backyard?
so 12 cars in a backyard is not, there's no language in the fire code that prohibits that, so.
That falls under
In the back, sorry, the gentleman in the back's been waiting patiently.
Good enough. We had lots of information about the rooming house, legal and illegal, and what to do with it. But there is a one bigger monster is growing up behind our backyard. And that one is a 6-story, 10-story building in a small apartment on a buildings. I mean, a lot. Is there any law for it in Scarborough? Is there anything that we can do about it? Because main reason is they talking about is that the major street, which is the one major street in Scarborough? Can you define any major street? Which one is major street in Scarborough?
Sir, we can, I don't know if
So
planning.
those wouldn't fall under us. I don't know if Pablo wants to.
Yeah, so.
So just to give folks context,
Yeah.
Last year the city passed what's called major streets, and there's a map that shows which are the major streets in Scarborough Southwest, and you're allowed to go up to 6 stories as of right. So this is what the gentleman's talking about.
So I represent inspections. Zoning is a separate team within our group, so I don't have full details on what streets and what sizes and what setbacks. Those are all highly zoning related questions, and they do need to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. I do recall that there was a case recently that had gone through C of A in Scarborough. I don't recall the major street. It had setback issues. Yeah, and that was unsuccessful. I mean, everyone is looked at on an individual basis. If there are C of A and V issues that have to be addressed, they're going to get addressed, and if they don't satisfy the council, it doesn't go through.
Yeah, but
We don't
90%
have
of
any idea that which one is a major street. Is a pharmacy is a major street, or the Eglinton is major street, or the Warden, or the
Sir,
Park?
email us. We can provide the map of what the city planning has deemed what are the major streets.
I can tell you.
Yes.
The street maps also.
Yeah.
That's no problem, I will do that. Yeah, I have it.
Chris, I want to thank you because we listened to you last October 2024 when you gave us these handouts, okay? And you referred to the 90 houses that Tanya and our groups submitted to you. My question is to you this. When you had that list and you said you responded to them all, we know you responded to them because the guys went to the one next door to us, knocked on door doors, they weren't allowed to go in. They knocked on our doors by mistake, but we let them in, and they knocked on the next door, okay? From what I understand, the tenant or the owner has to let them in before they can inspect. My question to you is, did anybody do any research into the owners of those homes that reported to you as suspected illegal houses, and we talked about the poor players for the developments. Did anyone research that and continues to research the owners that have been presented, whether they have the committee of adjustment or whatever, to see if there are constant players?
So when we receive a file, our clerical staff or 311 will receive a file. It'll go to our clerical staff. They'll triage it and send it to our staff and our frontline officers. So once our frontline officers get the file, we'll do a deep dive in our database. Our database houses not only our information, but our colleagues in Toronto buildings, as well as zoning information that is relevant to if there's a zoning application present, or if there is any number of things present. So our staff will do a deep dive in our database and go through who the owner is, what are the properties they own, what are the, if there's a number of file, if there's a laundry list of files for this property, we're gonna be going to that investigation with a lot more knowledge and a lot more understanding that we have our senses up, and we're very aware and probably a little bit given less of a grace period than you typically would if there's another property where this owner is on no other list. We've gone through our database and there's 3 files since 1973 for it. Then that's nothing. So we do a deep dive on every single property, and we look at the operator and with the owner that's on file to see if there's any connections with other properties that we're looking at.
Were
Yes.
any of those licenses revoked?
Which licenses?
They didn't have
They didn't have licenses.
If a person has their license revoked, what, can they apply at a later date?
That's a neat question. So it depends what the license was revoked for, right? So let's say it's revoked for because there was a fire issue or there was a property standards issue. It all depends on what the tribunal decides the period is going to be and whether they comply with that order that was issued to them. So I can speak to property standards. If there was a health and safety issue in the property and they say that, or like a lack of bathrooms, and it takes X number of months for them to get that fixed, right? The tribunal may say, oh, you have 3 months to fix it. If not, we're going to take your license and then you can't apply for a year, right? But it also depends, right? So if it's a fire issue, then Toronto Fire would deal with that, right? So our team can deal with the property standards portion of it, right? So like we talked about waste, graffiti, long grass and weeds. When it comes to occupancy, or if it's not a multi-tenant house anymore, we'll refer it to another team within MLS, right? So someone will have oversight over that property. It may not always be Chris and I, because it may not meet that definition of a multi-tenant house. If it is to do with the building and the structural adequacy, we'll send that to Toronto Building, right? Yeah.
Sorry, we're trying to get folks who haven't spoken, gentlemen in the red and black.
Selected me. My question is, with the multiple tenancy house, if there's not enough parking space in my area, on the street, left and right, they have 6 to 7 cars on the street. On the snow time, we could hardly get out. So is there an issue with that? Is there a limit on an area with a multiple housing that has multiple rental property without any parking space?
So I can answer that. If they are applying for a license, there are parking requirements under the zoning bylaw. It's 2 parking spaces for 4 bedrooms. Right, and I understand people are going to have more cars than that, right? They're going to park on the street. So at that point, it becomes a front yard parking issue, parking enforcement, TPS issue, and then we have to refer to our colleagues there, right? If you're living if the multi-tenant house is in an area where it's well served by transit, it may then require no parking spaces, right? So it all depends on what was approved in the zoning bylaw at the time that the bylaw was passed.
So sir,
yeah, exactly,
for the parking problem, you have to call TPS, Toronto Police Parking Enforcement, to address those cars because it's a 3-hour bylaw. Okay, Marie?
So
Can I speak next after her, please? Yes.
A lot of the 90 homes that we gave you, a lot of them, we were told they were living together as a family.
Single.
Right. How do you determine that?
So during our inspection, if a single housekeeping unit, just for those of you who are not aware, is a group of people, they could be friends, they could be acquaintances that share the house, whether it's a bungalow, a 2-story, whatever. They don't have locks on their bedroom doors. Those are types of things we look at. Do they hang out on a regular basis? Do they know each other? Do they know each other's phone number? These are our questions. Well, I'm not going to get into our investigative techniques because that's not smart. But we do know. I know you think I'm making stuff up, but I'm not. we go through a lot. We go through a long list of things, and we're not we're very aware of the tricks. We know what people are going to tell us versus what is reality, or we know that people, if they want to throw us off the set, they're going to say certain things, right? So we're aware of the tricks. If there's, sorry, I'm not.
Hold on, please. Let's finish this question.
Okay. The one segment we don't talk about are the tenants. Without tenants, there are no rooming houses, right? So during the pandemic, when John McKay, Paul Ainsley, and Mitzi Hunter were on a Zoom, I proposed a tenant's Bill of Rights. Why did I say that? In my community, we got 26 languages. We got folks coming from repressive regimes. They don't want to blow the whistle. They don't know their rights. I'm a germaphobe, so I just hope for the rest of my life I never have to share a washroom with anybody. So if I'm in a rooming house and my rights are being violated, how do I know my rights are being violated? What are my rights? So question for everybody. Did you guys adopt a tenant's Bill of Rights that is published in these rooming houses in multi-languages so they know what their rights are? Okay.
So that would fall under the Rental Tenancy Act, right? That's not something our team would deal with. But when it comes to, so we're dealing with property standards. I want to make that very clear.
I am too,
Okay, so if there is a property standards issue and it's coming from a tenant, then yes, we're going to deal with that. Because I think somebody had mentioned before that tenants are afraid to make complaints, right? And so, but the only way we know about it is if the tenant tells us, right? Because we're not in that home. So that's why Chris mentioned, our team provides literature. If we feel that there's going to be displacement, our team refers it to Housing Secretariat. That is something that's out of the purview of MLS, but we do refer it to the divisional partners that do have experience with.
I'm not interested in paper solution. My constituents for so many years are the drug dealers, the encampment people, the folks who are, by the way, there's a lot of trauma among this population in houses, right? Again, I'm in a rooming house. Here's someone who needs some mental support, and that person is aggressive, disturbing my peace. How do I know what my rights are to complain? So why would you guys be doing all of this and not think about the right of the occupants? And to publicly display in these rooming houses, these are your rights in multi-languages. And I can see the role of the counselor in terms of outreach, and these counselors are not doing enough outreach to have community town hall meetings to educate the constituents, the vulnerable people who are going to be the ones in these rooming houses. Chances are I'll never end up. I can sleep on a friend's floor rather than go in one of those. So I'm okay, even if I'm homeless. These are vulnerable people who don't know their rights. So when we talk about intersection, it has to be a balanced approach. It can't be just the owners violating, the homeowners getting upset. What about the people in these rooming houses? Okay?
Thank you, sir. We're going to hear from Mal, who's on my state staff team, about one example on Heel Avenue in Cliffside. Mal, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a house on Heel Avenue. It was previously an MTH house. It still is an MTH house now that it's been demolished. But there was a scenario in which everyone in that house had to immediately leave because it was declared unsafe by MTH. In that particular property, we had fire there to support, we had Red Cross there to support. Everyone in that house was relocated to a proper shelter place. They all had a place to sleep. They all were given handover care with Housing Secretariat, with a lot of different private and housing organizations all in one. So with respect to the handover is being done with respect to crisis situations, with respect to individuals that need those types of cares. And I've seen it firsthand with one of the cases, with Heel Avenue.
So that, it was, I guess, a relative success story, but the point to staff remains that the folks who typically access Housing Secretariat tools and resources are perhaps maybe fluent in English, they're citizens, they know how systems work. And please correct me if I'm wrong, majority of the tenants we're seeing are likely not non-citizens, undocumented, English is not fluent for them. And so when we're looking forward-looking, this is all still new. There's plenty of room, obviously, for reform, whether it's deterrence, fines, charges, but tenant outreach. what's on your outlook?
Sorry, I didn't understand that at the beginning, but if our team comes into a home where someone doesn't speak English, we use translation services. I believe that's the same for all of our divisional partners, right? The rental brochure that we give out is translated into multiple languages, so if the person does identify that they don't speak English, then we can provide them with literature in the language that they speak, and we can get it translated for them if that language is not already translated. And then again, just like how everyone does, we are using translation services. So, and then we also, if there is someone on our team that speaks that language, then they will be assigned to that property so they can help assist there as well.
Again, that's reactive. I'm dealing with proaction. That's reactive.
Just a suggestion, similar to your fire exit postings and all that, could you not have something that must be posted by the main entrance? This is your information source in like 26 different
I think that's a
languages?
great idea. Yeah, so if people are not aware, as a part of one of the requirements is you have to have a notice board that includes your waste management plan, your pass, who do I call if this happens or this happens or this happens, right? Exits, all of that stuff. And so I think that's a really great idea that we can suggest to our policy team, and then when this bylaw is reviewed again, to get that added.
Could we do that with the bad faith operators who are, running rooming houses, illegal rooming houses? Can we mandate that?
If it's unlicensed, we can't, the bylaw does not mandate it.
Right, but we're in the scenario, practically speaking, we have every single rooming house, whether we use the word illegal or not, it's a rooming house. Why can we not be more reform-minded to enforce certain expectations as we're moving them towards a compliance regime?
Right, so chapter 575 is the multi-tenant houses bylaw, and that sets the guidelines for what is required of a multi-tenant house and what is a multi-tenant house, and that's for a licensed multi-tenant house. So we have to go by, we do have other tools we use, the property standards bylaw, the waste bylaw, the law, the turf, grass, and prohibited plants bylaw, the fence bylaw. We have many different bylaws. We enforce snow and ice, as the gentleman here mentioned. We do have other bylaws that we can enforce, but that would not be something we could be adding to the.
That couldn't, because it's, okay. Folks, we're 20 minutes past. We'll take the last couple of questions, and I hope staff can still stick around to take one-on-ones.
Sorry, so just very quickly, would you then take it as a takeaway, because multi-tenant housing is totally separate, to Paul's point about licensing rentals? Would you take that away, knowing that you're not really addressing the problem, but MTH, great idea, wonderful, let's park that.
Yeah.
But there's a bigger problem totally not being addressed, and won't be. Would you then take it away and talk to your legal counsel and see whether, as in the case of Mississauga, what the authority is to actually, outside of the provincial legislation that covers MTH, completely outside of that, can we license? Because I have to counter what you said, Parthy. It's the environment of housing is one thing, but it's not about housing as in chicken cooping and creating ghettos. We're talking about safe housing.
Sorry, that wasn't my position. That's
No,
the
I know,
city
but
area.
you're identifying it as a, this is, anyway, the landscape is safe housing, at least in the context of the people who are here in this room and the decision makers. It's safe housing, not just housing.
Exactly.
And so our policy team is here, they're taking notes of all that stuff that everyone's mentioning, but it also has to come from council to direct us to do that work. So I think that's something that we could
It's in
work
your
with.
hands,
But you can do the research.
It's the mayor's or
Yeah, so we can start the research on that totally.
Yeah, and I think the Brampton, Mississauga can serve as models.
We can do work with
Just
our
like
colleagues.
groundwork on it, so you're ready.
Sorry, you haven't asked a question.
It's not more so,
Comment.
well, I have questions, believe me, but I think I need my own hour with these. But to bring up the point about in terms of insurance, yes, a lot of these places are probably not insured properly. I work in the insurance industry. So you can go on the Insurance Bureau of Canada website, and you can make an anonymous tip. So ibc.ca, Insurance Bureau of Canada, ibc.ca. Yes, because I'll tell you this: regular properties, when you're insuring them and you're renting it out, usually the rule of thumb is if you're renting it out to long-term tenants, it's 3 or more unrelated roommates will go under the regular market. Anything else over that is considered a rooming house. So chances are they're probably lying about how many.
I know someone who lost their insurance because of that.
And
They
so
had
when they
4
lose
people.
it, it's very expensive. They have to go very high risk after that. So let's make it more uncomfortable for them too.
Excuse me. Yeah, there's so much great information and thoughts that everyone has here. James's page is the James Doyle Report. It's on Facebook. We'll post this, and if you have comments and thoughts and things like that, please feel free to use that space to write what experiences you have. Also, if you have stories that you want told, please, contact us, because my son, he's into this idea called democracy, and he figures, and he figures that democracy only occurs when we are informed. And I gotta thank this wonderful gentleman here from Sun that's brought us into this, who's made such a great effort for everyone to ask questions, to find out who shows up and who doesn't. So these are all very, very important things. So thank you to everyone. And also thanks to the staff, because we know you guys, you hear people call you all the time and tell you about how much they love you, right?
Every day. Sorry, can I get you to repeat that?
It's on the record. That way.
No, I want to follow up on the recording. I want to share that.
The James Doyle Report.
Okay.
On that note, thank you everyone for showing up and having your questions and concerns aired. I want to thank staff as well. This is an ongoing discussion and work that needs to be done. Please contact our office with any potential rooming houses or join the working group.